asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you all again today. And the subject today, are the people outside? Maybe some of the younger people or the children, you can come and sit here on the carpet and leave a few chairs for. The empty chairs, you have to fill it up yourself. You can't leave it in the middle. Today the subject is heart of awareness. It's from the Ashtavakra Gita. There can be no more serious subject than this. I have on purpose selected it. This is the highest teaching of Vedanta. What we are about here, Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta. And the highest, the final teaching. There is nothing more than this. Beyond this, there is only silence. I can remain silent also, but then you might think it's profound to begin with. After some time, you'll get bored. So, the highest teaching that can be given, I personally think, in any philosophy of the world, any spirituality in the world, it's this Ashtavakra. The religion is of two kinds. The preliminary remark here. One is a conventional religiosity, and one is spirituality. What is the difference? The difference is this. Basically, I want to be happy in life, and my idea is I'll be happy if I have money and I have the conveniences of life. I have, husband and wife and children and good things of the world. That's basically what's going to make me happy. I'm convinced about that. And religion is a part of that. Many people who are religious, most people in the world who are religious, who go to temples and churches and mosques, they fall in this category. God is a help for my life. My life is not for God. God is for my life. Do you see the difference? A car is a convenience. A washing machine is a convenience. God is also convenience. Makes my life better. That's the belief. Those who believe in this way, most people do. That's the conventional religiosity. You know what is the difference? The difference is this. I believe that if I worship God and do pujas and all, I will be healthy, I won't get laid off a job. If I get laid off, I'll find a better job. My children will be happy. Things will go well in my family. You say, what's wrong with that, Swami? Nothing wrong at all. I'm not saying it's wrong. But God is meant for that. So I worship God and I attend Sunday church regularly or go to the temple and offer puja and whatnot. If it doesn't work, something bad happens. I said, I prayed and prayed so much. God didn't respond. So I stopped believing in God. It doesn't work. God is fired, laid off, didn't perform. God was supposed to help me to lead a good life, didn't perform. So laid off. I don't believe. Even other things which we do, it's not just going to a church or a temple. Practicing yoga. Why? Are you practicing yoga for kaivalya, liberation, enlightenment? No, not really. That's nice too if it happens, but basically for managing stress. I want to be flexible and young and healthy and stress-free. So, gluten-free diet and yoga and all that. So yoga is for enhancing my quality of life. If it works, well and good. If it does not, I'll take up what is it, Pilates or something? So they're meant for enhancing the quality of my life. And again, nothing wrong with that. But remember, that's not the higher purpose of yoga. That's not the higher purpose of spirituality or religion. There is a different kind of spirituality. There is a different kind of religion which I call spirituality. Let's call that spirituality, where I do believe that God can be seen. I do believe that liberation is possible, enlightenment is possible. And my mindset has changed. I have examined life in the world and I see that is not going to lead to permanent, deep satisfaction and happiness. It is not. Nobody has attained it so far. And I also, through all my experiences in life, I see it's not possible in that way. But here are the scriptures of the world, the teachings of Vivekananda, of whether Ramana Maharshi, of the Upanishads, or any of the higher scriptures in all religions. They all promise that this higher spirituality will deliver. Atyantika dukkha nivritti paramananda praptischa. What does that mean? Complete cessation of sorrow, transcendence of sorrow, and attainment of the highest bliss. This is promised, that this is possible. I understand that. That's what drove Narendranath from person to person in Calcutta in the late 19th century. Have you seen God, sir? Not God as a convenience. Not God as a nice addition to all the conveniences of life. But God as the ultimate purpose of life. Have you seen God, sir? That's a spiritual quest. That's not a conventional religious quest. And in that higher kind of spirituality, which I'm talking about, life is meant for that. What's the purpose of life? And to be happy and nice here. No, yes, to be happy ultimately, but not through worldly means. Through that enlightenment which is promised in all the religions of the world. Through that, I will be happy. That becomes the purpose of life. That is spirituality. Is this distinction clear? The other kind of religion, when you go to temple, go puja laga diya, then you put some puja and all that, there's nothing wrong with that. That's mass religion. 99% of people who queue up in Tirupati and other places in Dakshineshwar, what are they queuing up for? Oh mother, reveal yourself, vision of Kali like Ramakrishna. I want to see Kali. Are they queuing up for that? Not at all. They'll be terrified if mother reveals. I don't want that. Suddenly the Divine Mother comes and reveals herself. Here I am, my child. No. I don't want this. I want money, I want health, I want peace and prosperity in my family. I want my community to be nice. In general, I want to be okay. Or at least only good books, nothing bad should happen to me. So, that is conventional religion. And that's most of religion. And one may start in that way. Especially when you are in the world, when you have a job and a family and responsibilities, it's natural to want the blessings of God and things will go well. There's nothing wrong, I repeat again, there's nothing wrong with that. But one must move forward. Ultimately, what will give peace and satisfaction in life? So this higher religion, what I call spirituality, Vedanta is about that. Vedanta is about that. And in this spirituality, in this higher religion, the highest possible text that I have come across in my life is this Ashtavakra. It is universally acknowledged as the final word in non-dual Vedanta. So in Advaita Vedanta, the final word, Ashtavakra, that's what we're going to talk about. I just want to set the context. Imagine the seriousness that is expected. Going to a temple, puja will be there, bhajan will be there, children will be running around and screaming and jumping, turning cartwheels. There will be also a lecture by a Swami, and there will be a havan, a kind of fire sacrifice, and bhajans will be there. We will exchange the gossip of the day. This is not that. If you are here for that, you are in the wrong place. You will be bored. You will be bored and you will disturb others also. This is the higher quest in life, the highest possible quest. So I want to impress upon you the seriousness of this. There is a reason why this was limited only to monks. People, you see, being a monk is a sign of seriousness. You have given up, formally, you have given up everything in life for only one thing. Everything has been set aside. The decks have been cleared for action. For what? For enlightenment only. For God realization. Moksha, nirvana, whatever you call it. For that purpose. And that was the cutoff. Demonstrate your seriousness, then I will share this with you. Not because of exclusivity, because otherwise it will not work. Non-serious approach to that. So, I hope I've scared you enough. Now we'll go deeper into this. This text, Ashtavakra, is regarded as the highest text of Advaita Vedanta. The final word. The title that I have chosen, The Heart of Awareness, is actually one of the best translations, maybe the best translation of Ashtavakra I've come across. Byrom. Not Byron. Byrom. B-Y-R-O-M. He was a professor of English from Oxford, trained in Oxford, but teaching here. He passed away a few years ago. B-Y-R-O-M. M.
Byrom.
Yes, not the poet.
Yeah.
M. M as in Minnesota. So, he called his translation the heart of awareness. That's why I've used that term. And he gives a very beautiful introduction. He says, when all the teachings, all the philosophies have fallen silent, when all the scriptures of the world have fallen silent, including the Upanishads, the teachings of the Vedanta, when all of them have said what is to be said and have fallen silent, Ashtavakra begins to speak at that time. He says the words are so luminous, light, they seem to glide off the pages. They seem to appear and disappear back into light. It's so difficult. Is it really very difficult Sanskrit? Simplest Sanskrit. It's in Sanskrit, but simplest Sanskrit. The language is not difficult. There are texts which are very difficult in language, in Vedanta. Tough Sanskrit. It's a difficult job to make out what they're saying. But this is not so. It's very direct. Oh, are there very subtle arguments? There are texts full of very deep and subtle argumentation. This is not one of them. There are no arguments. Come forward. Come up here. Come up here. You can sit here. Come. You can sit here. You have to be promised to be silent. And little less movement. No subtle argumentation. In Ashtavakra, if you see, there are texts which are full of very subtle question and answer and deep reasoning, which you might not even, doubts which you will never think about it, will never occur to you. Such questions have been raised and answered in so many texts. But Ashtavakra is not one of them. Ashtavakra, only the truth is given to you directly. The highest conclusion of non-dual Vedanta is repeated, and it's about one thing. Ashtavakra is a grand monotony. It's just about one thing. Who you truly are. And that's hammered in again and again and again. It's a grand monotony. Vedanta, the approach in Vedanta is, in Sanskrit you call it Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. Hear these truths again and again. Some people ask, what is the sadhana of Vedanta? Do you have to sit straight and meditate? You can do that if you want to. But that's not the sadhana. The spiritual practice here is first, hear these truths. Come to the Vedanta class, Saturday morning. First, that's the first thing, Shravana. Hear these truths. And then, when you have heard these things, think about it. Think about it. Just not, in India we say in through one ear and out through the other ear. No. I'm supposed to hear a talk by a, heard the sermon, that's it. Where is the sermon? Gone out. Came here, it left. Not in here. Think about it. What did he say? What does Ashtavakra say? What does the text say? And having thought about it, say nididhyasana, meditate. Meditate is a heavy word. It's just try to assimilate it. Let's put it this way. The first stage is a stage of attention. Attend to what he's saying. Often it happens in spiritual talks, especially Vedanta, is supposed to be very high and dry and boring and arid. So most of the time, many people, they come and they sit there dutifully. Especially it happens in India. You're supposed to hear a Vedantic talk. It's part of your religious activities. Sit there, as one Vedanta teacher used to tell us. You are here, but you do not hear. Bodily here, mentally not here. Sit down, oh, I've done my job. I drove so much on the freeway, 30 minutes. Now I've come here on this hot day outside, nice air condition, settle down here, and then switch off. Oof. No. First stage of Vedanta is attend to it. You should be able to answer. In Hindi they say, Kya bola? What did he say? I should be able to repeat to myself. That's why in traditional Vedanta talks, you would have to memorize the text and repeat it back the next day. So I'm not asking for that. It'll drive away 90% of the audience. But in your own language, you should be able to at least tell yourself, this is what he said. That's the first stage. It demands attention. One. Then second stage, once you have received it, is the intellect comes into play. Chew upon it. Like a cattle, they chew the cud. What did I get? Once it's in there, dwell on it. These are my doubts. These are the arguments for. These are the arguments against it. You come to a conclusion about it. That's the second stage, called mananam, literally reflection. In Vedanta, it's not a question of believing. No. It's a question of understanding. It's like you go to the university here and enroll for a physics course or math course, and the professor says something and you say, so professor said, do you get it? No, professor, you're so great, I just believe you. Whatever you say, I believe you. The professor will be exasperated. No, you don't have to believe me. I want you to get it. It won't work if you believe me. No, professor, I just trust you. There's nobody like you. Vedanta is not like that. You must get it. So that's the second stage. I get it. And the third stage is when you acknowledge from your inner being, it's the truth. It's a fact. Not just something which I've heard, not just something which I'm intellectually convinced of, that's a nice philosophy. No, it's a fact. So 3 stages. Hearing, reflection, meditation. Or more specifically, study, systematic study, that's the first stage. The second one is intellectual debate, turning it over in your mind until you're clear about it. Clarity comes. Third stage is not only clear at the level of intellect, a fact. Is there the sun in the sky? You bet, Swami, it's so hot out there. Is it a fact or is it theory? It's fact. So what we are doing here, the third stage, meditation should render it into a fact. It's a fact of life. Just like the Swami standing here, yes, I am awareness. I am the nature of awareness. Not a philosophical conclusion. As a fact. So that should be the third stage. These 3 stages. Today also, when I will speak, I'll take up just one verse from Ashtavakra, from the first chapter, just one verse. Go through these 3 stages. First of all, you should be able to say, what did the Swami say? Especially young guys here, I'm going to ask one of you. What did he say? 1. Second is, think about it. If you have questions, ask me. Or ask yourself, or even better, reason it out for yourself. And the third one is, note it as a fact. Just like it's a fact, you feel it's a fact that you're sitting here on this chair and present here, it's a fact. It's not theory, not speculation. Similarly, is it a fact? That becoming a fact, it may not happen right away, but at least the first one I'll expect from everybody. The second one, as many as possible. Third one, the few. That's enlightenment itself. That's moksha. So if you're lucky, maybe yes. If not today, later on. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Now one more point. There are texts in Vedanta which are what is called Shravana Pradhana, which are primarily meant for listening, hearing these truths. They are the fundamental texts of Vedanta called the Upanishads. Vedanta literally means the Upanishads. So the fundamental texts of Vedanta called the Upanishads, they are meant for you hear the truths, you study it. They are full of what you might call even mystical, poetical utterances. The rishis, the sages saw the truth and told it to us in mystical language, poetical language, very beautiful language. Not so much argumentation or philosophy. So there's one kind of text, and that's the primary text. The core text, the canonical text of Vedanta, called the Prasthanatraya, especially the Upanishads. So they are, in Sanskrit, Shravana Pradhana. They're meant to be studied and heard again and again and again till it sinks in. There are other texts where the same truths are given, but they are Manana Pradhana. That means they are meant for philosophical reasoning and argumentation. You have questions, you get the answers there. You are led through a subtle process of philosophical reasoning. Something like Panchadashi, something like Upadesha Sahasri, something like, or even more, the toughest texts in Advaita Vedanta, Advaita Siddhi and so on. They are all Manana Pradhana, highly philosophical, full of the subtlest thinking that I found in any philosophical literature of the world. Extremely subtle. In the depth they go through, the depth they go into, the questions they raise are incredible. It's a lifetime's work to understand the question, let alone the answers. So that's another kind of text, which are based on reasoning primarily. There's a third kind of text, which is Ashtavakra, it's important to point this out. It's meditation, Nididhyasana Pradhana. It's the third stage text, where you have gone through the first two stages. You know what Vedanta is about. You have read Upanishads and other books like that. And you have reasoned it out. You have had questions and answers and you have struggled. You've gone through that phase also. Now comes the final phase where you have got conviction, you have got clarity, now settle down in it. See it for a fact. This is called Nididhyasana Pradhana. The emphasis is on the final, the third stage. These are texts meant for enlightenment. These are texts which, if you are already enlightened, it helps you to settle down and stay there. These are such texts. There are very, very few of them. So I've not started, I'm still advertising, selling it to you. So when you go through this today, I will tell you something, listen to it, and you guys, you're going to tell me what I said. And the second thing is, you've got questions, reason it out, ask me. And the third thing is the most important. Try to see it in your heart of hearts. Is it a fact? Note it. Is it true? Understanding, clarity. This is the goal of today's talk. Now in Ashtavakra, as I said, simple language, very direct language. As Byram says, it's like the words are coming out of light and they glide on the pages and disappear back into light. That's so beautifully he puts it there. I will take up just one verse. And the whole book is nothing more than this. In the book, you in different ways, you get the same thing again and again and again. And this is, as I said, it's like finishing school of non-duality. The final thing. Nothing more remains to be said after this. Nothing more can be said actually. So here, the idea is to let it come alive within you. So, because it's a meditation, primarily meditation, that's why I was saying I might even sit and talk, but I'll stand. It's not really a lecture. I would enjoy it more, and you will enjoy it more also. You need not really listen to all that I'm saying. That's why you just said you have to listen carefully. You have to, but I'm talking about something more than listening. At any point, if you feel you're getting it, the idea would be to close your eyes and be with it. Don't worry, you won't miss anything. When you come back, I'll still be talking about the same thing. It's just the same thing.
Should I write?
You can write if you want to, but writing is good for the first stage and the second stage. This stage, you can write. Writing is better than being inattentive. So writing is good if it keeps your mind there. And at any point, if you feel that I am feeling quiet, deep and indrawn, at that point you stop writing. Otherwise you can go on, you can go on writing. Inspired talks, when Swami Vivekananda gave those talks in Thousand Island Park. The lady, I think Miss Waldo, who wrote it down. She wrote, Waldo, she wrote it down. And she says that actually, it's so beautiful. Swami Vivekananda's, the best teachings are there. It's like I'm reading something like Ashtavakra in English. So she says, when Swami Vivekananda would go into its highest flights of inspiration, at that point I couldn't write anymore. So you get the choicest teachings there, but actually she says even better teachings were there which we did not write. Because we could not write anymore, we just remained absorbed in it. And unfortunately those are gone now, we've forgotten. So at that point you can stop writing, if you feel like that. But not the other way around. Feeling distracted, thinking about something else, stop writing, no. Writing will keep your focus here. Alright. Having said that, let's go into it. What does Ashtavakra have to say? As I said, only one thing. Yesterday you asked that yes, Vedanta is saying I am Brahman and all that, it's all very good. Your first question was, so how do I become that infinite bliss? And if you remember, my answer was, Vedanta says you are already that infinite bliss. You are already that infinite bliss. Then you should rephrase your question and say, okay, suppose I even admit that maybe I am, but then how do I know it? How do I feel it? How do I get the benefit from it? If that is your question, then Ashtavakra is your man. He's going to give you the answer. He says our real problem is not that we have to become Brahman or become the Atman. Our real problem is that we already are and we do not know it. Our problem is ignorance. Ignorance about what? Ignorance about what we truly are. We think we know. Who am I? In Sanskrit there is a word samsari. Here I am, this person, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, and this is my family, these are my responsibilities, these are my projects in life, these are my failures, these are my hopes and frustrations, these are my successes. And this bundle, this personality with its little personal history, this is who I am. In Sanskrit there's a one word for this, samsari. In Bengali you say samsara. This is samsara. Who am I? In Sanskrit, samsaravan. I am the one with samsara. This is my samsara, my personal life. And Vedanta says, that's wrong. You are profoundly mistaken. And it is because of this mistake that we suffer. We suffer because of a mistake, of a deadly error, a fatal error in our thinking and our understanding. What you think about yourself, you're completely wrong about that. You are not that, you're something else. That's what Vedanta wants to tell us. That's what Ashtavakra wants to tell us. So the entire book is about who you are. How you are profoundly mistaken about what you think about yourself. Mark Twain used to say that it's not what we do not know that gets us into trouble. It's what we know that it just ain't so that gets us into trouble. Say, you are Satchidananda Brahman. Say, no, I'm not that. I am this one. It just is not so that I am Brahman or I am pure consciousness or an immortal spirit. No. It's just what that we are so sure. It just ain't so. That's what gets us into trouble. What's the verse? I'm starting now. But believe me, that background was necessary. What's the verse? I'll tell you the verse. It's the 12th verse of the first chapter of Ashtavakra, 12th verse. But it could be just any verse. All of them are more or less equally powerful. Here is the verse. Atma sakshi vibhu purna eko muktaschidakriyaha asanga nispriha shanto Brahmat samsaravaniva. What does it mean? Atma, the self. I'll make it even more direct. You. Don't look who. You. Atma means you. You are what? Sakshi. Each word is powerful. Each verse here is enough for enlightenment. I would go so far as to say each word, as we take it up, we'll see. Each word may be enough for enlightenment. The verse itself, this one verse is enough for enlightenment. You just dwell on it for the rest of your life. At one time or the other, I can guarantee you will get moksha, Brahma Jnana. This one verse. What does it mean? Atma, you. Technically self, but let's make it more direct, personal. You. What are you? Sakshi, the witness consciousness. I'll explain each one, but let's just see the translation. Sakshi, witness consciousness. Vibhu, in all forms.
In
all forms. I'll explain. Pervading all forms. Purnam, complete, infinite. Filling, literally it means filling everything. Purnam, complete, the whole, infinite. Ekaha, one. Mukta, free, liberated. Chit, pure consciousness. Akriya, beyond action. Asanga, completely not attached. Nispriyaha, beyond desires. Shanta, forever peaceful. Brahmat samsara vaniva. Samsara, what we think about ourselves. Brahmat, by error, by mistake. You think samsara eva means as if. By error, samsara vaniva means as if samsari. You will say, Swami, my very fact, this is a very powerful Sanskrit word, samsari. There is no quite good English equivalent. The equivalent would be that I'm a person of the world. I'm a worldly person. That's also not enough to say. Samsara is a very wide term. I am a samsari. Ashtavakra says, eva, as if. You think you're a samsari. Why do I think that I'm a samsari then? Brahmat, by error, by mistake. Computer, when it crashes, what do you see? Fatal error? Fatal error. You think you are samsari. Let's take it up one by one. Atma means the self. You. The whole of Ashtavakra, whole of Vedanta ultimately is about you. People think it's boring, but it's not boring. It's the most interesting subject in the world. After all, what's the most interesting subject for you? We are most interested in ourselves. History must be his story. History. But this is your story. It's entirely about you. So the whole book, Vedanta is about you, and Ashtavakra especially, is one thing only, the truth about you. Alright, what is the truth? Enough of hard sell, give it to me now, the truth. First of all, Sakshi, you're the witness consciousness. Literally the word Sakshi means the one who sees clearly. Ikshana in Sanskrit means to see. Who is a Sakshi? The one who sees. Literally in say when you want a witness for a crime or something, the policeman looks for a witness. Who is a witness? The one who has seen. And not involved, not a party to it. There's a difference. Our error is, I think I'm involved. This being involved in it, I'm quite clear that I'm involved. Am I not involved in family? Am I not involved in career? Am I not involved in the community? Am I not involved in this body-mind? Most of all, I'm involved in this body-mind. Am I not? He says you are Sakshi. You're not involved. You are a witness. It does not deny that the world is out there. Does not deny that your family and your career are out there. Does not deny that you experience a body. Does not deny that you experience a mind and memories and personality. All of that, what you are experiencing, is not escapism. It's not denial. Admits everything, but points out something that you are missing. Are you a part of it, or are you a witness to it? We shall see very soon that we are actually a witness to it. Are you an actor in the movie, or are you part of the audience? We think I'm in the movie. Vedanta says it's a movie and you are sitting in the movie hall watching it. Or you cry with the hero when the tragedy comes. You cry with the hero also. But there's a crying which is, you are crying as a part of it, it's real and you're in the middle of it, that's one crying. And you are watching your favorite actor on screen undergoing tragedies and you weep with him or her, that's another kind of weeping. One is a real mess, you're in trouble. The other one is you're appreciating art. You're still weeping, but you're appreciating art. You're different from it. It's not real for you. Sakshi. You say is it enough to just say it? Can you prove it that I'm a witness? Yes, I can. Think about it this way. Right now you see this world. The world is out there, we are not denying it. But who are you? Are you not the witness of the world? Are you not aware of the world? Are you not aware of the world? Say, yeah. Be a little confident. I'm going to ask you. Are you aware of the world?
Yes. Yeah.
I hope you are at least aware of the speech, what I'm talking about right now. First stage, attend to it, what I'm saying. Are you aware? Yes. Are you awake?
Yes.
Yes. Good. So you are aware of what? Whatever you are aware of is follow this carefully, is an object of your awareness. Clear?
Yeah.
A house is an object of your awareness. What you are seeing here is an object of your awareness. You can see me, I am an object of your awareness. My words, the sound, is an object of your awareness. You are aware of my words. What you are aware of and the one who is aware, they cannot be the same. हिंदी जो देखता है और जिसको देखते हैं दोनों एक नहीं हो सकते. The two cannot be same. That which you see and the one who sees, you see, and this is what you see. You cannot be the same.
Right.
Everything that you see is different from you. Think about it. This wall is different from you. These persons are different from you. Your own hand in front of your eyes must be different from your eyes. Even the glasses that you wear must be different from your eyes. The only thing that the eyes cannot see are the eyes themselves. Everything that the eyes see must be different from the eyes. And you are not any of these things. You are different from them. But if you... ये कपड़ा देखिए. This is an object. Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
You're seeing it with your eyes?
Yeah.
So the eyes are different and the cloth is different?
Yeah.
Surely?
Yes.
इतना ही बस. जो देखते हैं, what you see is different from you.
Yes.
Clear?
Yes.
What you are aware is different from you. You say, yeah, go on, that's simple. Now, it's not so simple. Now apply it to the body. Do you see the body?
Yeah.
No? You can't see the body?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Are you invisible man? You can see your hands, you can see your body.
Yes.
You can feel the body. You have a tummy ache or something.
Yeah.
I'm hot or I'm cold. And feel it. You can see the body, you can feel the body, you can touch the body. You can unfortunately sometimes smell the body also. All five senses can make the body an object. You are aware of the body through all the five senses. If you are aware of something, you cannot be that thing.
But when you see the mirror, do you see the mirror or you see yourself?
What do you see?
I
If you
see
see,
myself.
you see yourself.
I see myself.
Reflection of yourself.
You see, not only that, it's wrong on two counts. First of all, you're seeing a mirror and you are seeing a reflection.
Yeah.
Not this body, number one. Number two, what you will see is a reflection of the body.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes.
You see a reflection of the body. You do not even see the body. At least here you are directly seeing the body. In a mirror you see only a reflection of this body. And this body also is something that you are aware of. You, the person, your memories, your biodata, your knowledge, all of that do you see reflected in the mirror? No. You only see the physical body reflected in the mirror. What you are aware of, see how easily we said, I see myself. My God, you are seeing a reflection, and that too a reflection of your body. How close our identification is with the body. When you point this out, you say, who are you? I say, here I am. What am I pointing to?
Body.
Body, here. Body. And if somebody holds this, what is this? I say it's me. But am I aware of this? Am I aware of it? We're most aware, especially when the body is sick. And as we grow older, we become more and more aware of the body. We're aware of the body. The principle is what you are aware of, that you are not. It's an object of awareness. If you are aware, look at this. You are aware of the cloth. You can all see it. Are you a piece of cloth? No. Of course not. Thank God. What you are aware, you are not that. See a glass of water here. When you see a glass of water, do you become a glass of water?
No.
Thank God, no. Then how? Follow this. I see the body. How do I say I am the body?
I'm not the body.
But we say that. Don't we say it? What is this? I. Who are you? This. We say that. Ashtavakra says, Brahmat samsaravaniva. Your samsara is entirely to do with this body, and that's completely out of error. You are something which is aware of the body. But being aware of something does not mean you are that. But without any question, we take it that I am this. Let me quickly show you how you are the witness of the body and not the body. One, I'll give you 5 quick reasons. Each of them will take 15-20 minutes to explain, but let me just quickly touch upon it. You think about it later. The body has changed so much. At one time, you're a little baby boy or girl like her. And then you grew up, you became a young boy or a girl. You became a teenager. Then the body grows up further. A young person, a middle-aged person, a senior person. The body has changed so much. But aren't you completely convinced that I was that baby? I was that little child. I was that teenager. I was that young person. I am this senior person now. The same I. You don't say that baby was somebody else, that senior person is somebody else entirely. No.
Which is the soul which is unchanged.
In Ashtavakra, I'll tell you something. We tend to live in our heads. Ashtavakra cleave closely to the fact, what you are observing, what you see as a fact. When the moment you use language like the soul is unchanged, it's something theoretical, it's on a book. But see that there is something which is unchanged in your life. And that's not the body. The body has changed so much. And yet you feel that you were the one who experienced it all in that changing body. So you, the unchanging observer, and the changing body, how can they be the same? First. Second, you, the drashta, the seer, the experiencer, and body is clearly the experienced. Clearly the experiencer and experienced cannot be the same. You are the experiencer, this is the experience. You are not the same. Second point, drashta and drishya. You are the drashta, the seer, the body is clearly the seen. You are the experiencer, the body is clearly experienced. How can they be the same? They cannot be the same. Second point. Third point, you are awareness. The body is something you are aware of. In Sanskrit, chit and jada. Jada means insentient, unaware, object. You are awareness. Simple experiment to prove that. Look at your hand. This Greg Good, who is a psychologist working in New York, but he is heavily influenced by non-dual Vedanta. So he has got some very beautiful experiments which he has generated to show you that you are awareness and the body is an object of awareness. Look at your hand right now, to vividly, to experience it now. Look at your hand right now. And you feel, now what are you doing? Looking at the hand, right? Don't be shy, look at it, your hand. Now let me ask you a question. Notice the experience. Isn't it that you are observing the hand? Follow this carefully. Is it ever that the hand is observing you?
No.
You don't feel that? No? You don't feel that. You may say, no, how do I know? But you may not know or not, but what is your experience? Your experience is, I am looking at the hand. It's not that the hand is looking at me, that would be creepy. Right? That's it, put your hand down. Now let me tell you something. This hand, you are the observer of this hand. That hand, you are the observer of that hand. You are aware of the hands, you are aware of the hand. The hand is not aware of you. These hands and feet and belly and chest and head, these are different parts of the body. None of those parts is aware of you. You are aware of them. Right? And the body is a collection of these parts. So you are aware of the body. The body is not aware of you. Correct? You are awareness. The body is an object of awareness. In Sanskrit, chit and jada. In this verse, Atma Sakshi Vibhu Purna Eko Mukta Chit. One word was chit, consciousness. The witness must be of the nature of consciousness. You, the witness, the observer, you must be of the nature of consciousness, chit. And the body is insentient, an object of consciousness, an object which you are aware of. Just as you are aware of this glass, you are also aware of the body. Now remember, I'm saying consciousness and object of consciousness. I am not saying living and non-living. The body is clearly living, but it's an object of your awareness. Third point. Fourth point. You always feel that you are in there. Don't you feel embodied? Where do you feel? Look at, with respect to the body, where do you feel? In the body or outside the body? In the body. That's your feeling. In Sanskrit, this is called pratyak, inner self. And the body is parak in Sanskrit. Parak means outer. That which is outer and that which is inner, how can they be the same? I am, to give an example, this body, I am in this t-shirt or this shirt. So the shirt is outer to me and I am in this shirt. In the same way, don't you feel, well, look at your feeling, don't you feel you are somewhere in this body? So what is inside and the body is a covering outside, how can they be one and the same? So how can you be the body? When you are in the shirt, do you say that I am the shirt? No. Shirt is an outer covering, I am in here. So that's the fourth point, that you are inside pratyak. The Sanskrit word is pratyakatma, inner self, and the body is outer. The fifth one is very simple. You always experience yourself as singular. How many are you? One. We don't think of ourselves as a committee. And the body is clearly composed of parts. Hands and feet and organs and tissue and cells. Millions and millions of parts. It's a combination, it's a system. It's many, a combination of many. So no, Swami, I also have parts. But if you think you have parts, point out your parts. Say here. But that's the body. Ego, memory, intellect, that's the mind. Apart from the mind and body, do you have parts? No. You are one. The self is always seen as one. The body is many. One and many. Ekam, anekam. I've given you 5 reasons to show why you are not the body. You are the witness of the body. Sakshi. What are the 5 reasons? One is that you are unchanging, the body is changing. Savikara, nirvikara. One reason. Forget thinking, oh, what are the other reasons? Don't worry, I'll repeat them for you. How are you a witness of the body? I'll give you 5 reasons. One is, you are unchanging, the body is continuously changing. From childhood till now, you see how much it has changed. Second one, you are drashta, the body is drishya. You are the experiencer, the witness. The body is the experienced. Clear? Third one, you are of the nature of consciousness, chit. Chit means consciousness. The body is an object of consciousness. In Sanskrit, jada, chit, jada. How can you be the same? How can you be the body? How can consciousness be not consciousness? Fourth one, you are in there, the body is out compared to you. You feel it that way. So then, how can the inner and the outer be one and the same thing? You never say that my body and the shirt are one and the same thing. No, my body is something in the shirt. Simple reason, but psychologically it works. And the last one is that you always think of yourself as a unit, as one. Body is clearly not a unit. It's a composition of many, many parts. Ekam manekam. 5 reasons why I am the witness of the body and not the body. Nirvikar, I am giving you in Sanskrit. Nirvikara savikara, drashta drishya, chid jada, pratyak parak, ekam anekam. Think about this. You will begin to see, okay, actually I may not be the body. We are not denying that the body is there. It is there. But are you this body? Sakshi, you are the witness. By error, by thinking that you are the body, what do you become? Samsari. Brahmat samsaravaniva. As if you are samsari. You are not this little person you think you are. Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so. No. This little person, you the Sakshi, the witness, you become the little person when you identify with the body. When you forget your witness nature and you identify with the body, with the mind, and you say, I am this one, then you become samsari. Samsaravaniva. More we can say about this, but let's go ahead. Vibhu, the second word. Vividham bhavati iti vibhu. In many forms. Now see, you are Sakshi, you are the witness. One more point about witness. The moment you say witness, the general idea is, oh, I have to be the witness. Okay, settle down, be quiet. You can be. Be the observer, watch all the sounds, listen to the sounds in the room. Listen. Witness to the sounds. Watch what's going on here. Don't do anything, just watch. Witness to what's happening in the room. Witness to the sensations of the body. Witness to the emotions arising in the mind. Swami, nothing is arising in the mind. Witness to the blankness of the mind. Is this witness? Careful, because this is what is mostly taught as being witness. Those who don't understand Vedanta, they think this is the witness. It's not. It's just the mind trying to be a witness. Isn't it true? When you say, and I tell you, quietly watch what's going on in the body and mind. That quiet watching has a beginning and an end. As long as you quietly watch, you are the witness. Were you the witness earlier, before this, when you're driving on the, when you're quarreling with somebody, when you're feeling upset, were you the witness? No. And when you stop watching, again the witness is gone. That witness which you generate by your effort, that is not the witness Advaita Vedanta speaks about. Are you following? It's a very serious thing here. Very subtle point. Because there is a whole set of meditation techniques which helps you function like a witness. In Buddhist meditation, for example. And that's a good thing. It's a good exercise. But that's not the witness Advaita Vedanta speaks about. That's not the witness Advaita Vedanta speaks about. The witness which begins and the witness which ends. When you begin witnessing and you end witnessing, that's not the witness, that's not Sakshi. The Sakshi which Vedanta talks about, the Sakshi which Ashtavakra is talking about, is a permanent Sakshi. Is consciousness which is ever a witness. Only, follow this carefully, only Brahmat, by ignorance, it forgets its witness nature and seems to be involved in the game of life. But truly speaking, it is ever a witness. In fact, without the witnessing of the witness, no experience would be possible here. It is that consciousness filtering through the mind, filtering through the senses, which enables you to see me and hear my voice. But when you forget that you are that consciousness, when you think that you are a body and mind, that very consciousness now thinks, I am a samsari. Do you see the magic of this? At that point also you are actually a Sakshi. You are not a samsari. You are actually pure consciousness. But by ignorance, your nature as pure consciousness is hidden. You don't see it, and what you see is a body, mind, and you think of yourself as this person. The person is a mask. It's a mask worn by the witness. You know the very word personality? It comes from mask. In ancient Greece, when dramas were staged in the theatre, they had no microphone and lighting and all that. So they would go out on stage and hold this big masks of the character, and then they would say out loud, sona means sound, persona means through which the sound comes. It's the big mask through which you speak. That's how the word personality has come. Mask. When you forget that the personality is a mask, you identify yourself totally with the personality. Samsari, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so. This is my life, these are my miseries, these are my projects in life. Samsari. It's a mask. What are you behind the mask? Awareness. Sakshi. You are, so the point I'm trying to make is, very important point. This Sakshi which Advaita Vedanta talks about is a permanent Sakshi. It does not depend on the efforts of the personality. I'm trying to become Sakshi very, very hard, Swami. I am failing. You will fail miserably and continuously if you try to become a Sakshi. And then what is the way? Know that you are permanently the Sakshi, even without trying, even without a little bit of Vedanta also, you are permanently the Sakshi. You were, you are, and you ever will be without the slightest effort on your part. Every effort just confuses the issue. All you need, only problem is ignorance. All you need is this light of knowledge. What knowledge? This is what Ashravakraha is pointing out. Just pointing out needs to be there. Are you the watcher of the world? Yes. Are you watching the body? Yes. Do you watch the mind? Yes. That which watches is the Sakshi, and that's the real you. That cannot be generated. And one teacher in the Himalayas was telling us about this. Sakshi, witness. You sit straight and you relax, and are you aware of the sounds? Are you aware? Yes, I'm aware of the sounds. I'm aware of the sounds. No, but watch it. Sound, aware of it. Immediate reaction in the mind. Distraction, aware of it. Reaction, irritation, aware of it. That one which is aware of it. If you are aware of the irritation in the mind, the one which is aware, is it irritated? No. Here is the magic.
I don't understand magic.
I'll tell you. When you watch, suppose you heard a sound. It distracted you and you got irritated. Are you aware of the irritation? Yeah. I feel very irritated. You feel irritated. You are aware of the irritation? Watch it. The one who is aware of the irritation, is that one irritated?
No.
Or is the mind irritated?
Mind. Okay, I got it.
Right? Correct. That should be the attitude. At every point, you should be clear, I get it. Not just, correct. No, make an effort. Get it. Understand it intellectually and see it as a fact. Do you clearly see? If you see the one who is not irritated, don't objectify it, you are the one who are not irritated. It's enough to give you enlightenment. Settle down there itself. Just close your eyes and be the one. Can that one ever be irritated? Tell me.
No.
What can be irritated? Mind.
Yeah.
What can be diseased, in pain? Body. What can get hunger and thirst? Prana.
Yeah.
The one which is aware of all of this neither gets disease, nor gets hunger and thirst, nor gets irritated. It illumines its Sakshi. Permanently so. Without any effort on your part. Note that, effortless. Nirayasa. Effortless, without any effort. You just need that little bit of pointing out, nothing else.
But you have to be aware that you are this consciousness. You have to separate yourself from that.
You have to separate yourself from that. That's what the mind is saying. One step further, don't worry, you're on the right track. You have to separate yourself from body and mind. Let's go one step further. You are separate from the body and mind. You just have to recognize that. Correct the error that you are not separate from body and mind. I have to separate myself, not the body, not the mind. No, not even that. You have to realize that you are eternally separate. I have to separate myself from the movie. You are separate. The very fact that you are watching the movie means that you are separate from the movie. Vibhu. The next word. Even deeper. Let me ask a question. Are you Sakshi, the witness in that body and mind? I'll ask a question. Are you Sakshi and witness in that body and mind or in all bodies and minds? Our first reaction is, oh, I am here. I am here in this body and this mind. Clearly, I feel that. I feel I'm aware of this body and mind, and through this body and mind, I'm aware of others. Ask this question. Are you actually in the body and mind? Is awareness in the body and mind, or are the body and mind in awareness?
Wow. Too much.
You see, she gets it. It's thrilling. The very hair on your hand will stand on the end. Isn't it a fact that you are aware, the body and mind they are in awareness. You are aware of them in your awareness. Are you aware? Do you think that there is a body and then somehow like pouring water in a glass, I am awareness poured in the body? Or rather, I am awareness aware of a body. Just as this thing, watch it carefully right now. This room is in your awareness. In the same way, this body is also in your awareness. Is it not so? Then in the same way, all these thoughts, including this Vedantic thought, in your awareness. You are the awareness in which a body appears. You are the awareness in which a mind appears. You are not awareness in a body. Make this distinction. We normally think we are bodies with awareness. Vedanta tells you, Ashtavakra is telling you, you are awareness with a body. Or you are aware of a body. Note something. It's actually a simple truth. Which is closer to the truth? Body is there and you are inside it, or you are aware of the body. If you are aware of the body, body is inside you, the awareness. You are not inside the body. In the same way, all bodies are in awareness. Vibhu, you are not in one particular body. If you try to be Sakshi sitting here in this one body and mind, you will fail. You are the Sakshi of the entire universe. You seem to be located. I am not denying. Ashtavakra never denies the fact. You seem to be located here. Because of the sense organs working here and the mind working here, seem to be the mind is channelizing consciousness. And that's why you seem to be located here. Imagine, when you are dreaming, same body, you are completely not aware of the body. Yet your awareness is there. You are aware of a dream world. Or in deep sleep, you are aware of blankness. So awareness continues. The body sometimes comes in the awareness, sometimes fades out of the awareness.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
You are the awareness, Vibhu, all pervading awareness. Why we don't think we are all pervading awareness? You know why? Because the doubt comes in the mind. Let's clear it out. And you will see how amazing it is. The doubt comes, all pervading Swami, all pervading means all of this and pervading everything. I don't feel like that. I feel I am here, I am not there. You feel you are there, you are not here. Right? Think about this. Here is the answer. Here and there, are they not both in my awareness? Right. Is it a fact that my awareness is here and not there, or rather I am aware of here and there? Space, I am coming to you. Space is in your awareness. Our normal reaction is, here is space and I am a little bit of awareness in the middle of space. Ashtavakra is telling you, entirety of space, the whole experience of space is in your awareness. Without awareness, no space. In deep sleep, what space do you experience? Time, now and then, past and present. We think that there is time and our awareness is like a dot of light traveling from the past to the present to the future. We are traveling through time, it seems. We are traveling through space. But Ashtavakra says, Even the past, present and future, are they not in your awareness? Without your awareness, would there be any past, present and future? At least for you? No. First awareness, then time. First awareness, then space. It's not first space, then awareness. Look how he's reversing the whole thing. Question?
Swami, I've got two questions.
Quick ones,
One-
because
Yes,
I'll go on.
one is, can you quantify the consciousness?
No.
Number one.
No.
Number two is consciousness in all individual being the same qualitatively, or it's not same?
Both answers. Look at it carefully. Can you quantify? No. Why? All quantification is in consciousness. Consciousness is ever the subject, never an object. All quantification is objective. You can quantify the world outside. You can quantify the body. You can quantify the life processes in the body. You can even quantify with modern psychological methods, thoughts, feelings. You can give some kind of, at least, if not ordinal, cardinal kind of ranking you can give to the thoughts. Yesterday we talked about in economics they do. But the awareness which illumines all of this, to quantify you must make it objective. The awareness is never objective. It is ever the subject. In fact, one definition of pure consciousness in Vedanta, it is not quantifiable. If you are quantifying, it is that awareness which is aware of the quantification.
Yeah.
It is not being quantified. Okay, one. Second, qualitatively the same. All qualities are in awareness. Awareness itself has no quality. That's the idea of nirguna in Advaita Vedanta. Any quality you can think of, it is an object for your awareness. Awareness itself is beyond all qualities. So in all beings, is it qualitatively the same? No quality you can speak about, but is it the same awareness in all beings? Yes. And Ashtavakra will go further. It is not the same awareness in all beings. All beings are in the same awareness. That is the meaning of the word Vibhu. Try to wrap your mind around it. Let me go further. Try to wrap your mind around it and then try to see it's a fact. It's completely counterintuitive to the way we are thinking. We are used to thinking of ourselves as consciousness or awareness in a body. They are trying to tell us, look, it's more closer to the truth to think of the body in awareness. Vibhu, Purna. The next word. Purna means infinite. Now I'll move faster. Whole, complete. What Vedanta says, it's not that there is a world, there are objects and there is awareness. So far it seems like that. So no. It is awareness alone which appears as the objects of awareness. It's not like awareness inside a universe or universe inside awareness. Like first we think that here is a body, inside that awareness is there like water in the glass. Well, Ashtavakra seems to be telling us no. Awareness is the container in which objects are there. Now in Purnam he is telling us there is no container-contained relationship. It is all one whole seamless reality. It's not as if wave is a thing which contains water. Is there a difference between wave and water?
No.
No, wave is a thing which has water. Show me then wave without water. I can show you the glass without the water. Empty glass, glass with water. Can you show me the wave without the water?
No.
Water is Purnam in the wave.
Yes.
Every bit of the wave is water. It just looks different. This wooden table. Are there two things here, table and wood? It's one and the same. Here in the table, wood is all pervasive. It is Purnam. In the same way, in the universe which we experience, this thing which we call Sakshi, look, he's making progress here. Step by step, he's telling something new. It's not consciousness and a world. It's not even the world in consciousness. It's just consciousness. It looks like something separate from consciousness. I will leave it at that. Vivekananda said, we Hindus worship a transcendent, immanent God. Very interesting. Transcendent plus immanent. Transcendent means who is beyond. Immanent means who is within all things. Now, if you look at consciousness, it seems to be transcendent. It's beyond this universe. I am consciousness, I am Sakshi. Sakshi, the witness, literally means something who is separate. So I am separate from the universe, I am apart from the universe. So is the universe something separate and you, the witness consciousness, you are something separate? No, he said, Vibhu, you are in all of them. And next he went one step forward. It's not that you are in all of them or they are in you. Rather, there is no they separate from you. There is no universe separate from this one consciousness. You, the pure consciousness, the Sakshi, the witness, are everything. Then you say, what am I witnessing then? You are witnessing a movie within yourself. You are not an audience sitting apart from a movie hall theater where separately a movie is being projected. Rather, the movie is within you, the awareness. Purnam. Not partial. Consciousness apart from the world. God and world. No. Brahman is the only reality which appears as you, the observer, and the observed. See, what happens is, in Vedanta they say, consciousness, the real consciousness, Purnam, the infinite consciousness, the moment, you know how we experience it in the world? Here is a clue. We experience it in the world as three. We experience it as an object of experience, you the experiencer, and the experience itself.
What is the experience itself?
Here is a glass, and you are the observer.
Yes.
Sometimes you see the glass and sometimes you do not. Now you are not seeing it.
No.
You are there. Glass is also here. You cannot see it.
Yeah.
Now when I bring it, there are three things. Not only you and the glass, but you are also experiencing the glass, seeing it. You are getting some knowledge. Here is a glass half full of water in the Swami's hand. That knowledge is called experience of glass. What Vedanta says, you the observer, the observed object, and the experience of observing are all of them the same consciousness. Our mistake is thinking, I am the consciousness, this is something apart from me, and I am experiencing this. Vedanta says, actually that pure consciousness is one reality which appears as three. When the moment it appears as three, we call it samsara. But right now it is only appearing as three, it's actually not three. You the experiencer, the experienced object, and your experience of the object, all three are in you the awareness, one unbroken awareness. That one unbroken awareness is Brahman, Atman, pure consciousness. Purnam. More can be said about this, I will not. We have already gone out, gone beyond time. But are you with me? Are you still? Do you still have stamina?
Yes.
Too much?
No.
Very good.
Very good.
Let me go. No, I will not take questions now. Let me go a little further. Hold on to the question. Don't forget it. Hold on to the question. Let him pass. Let me touch upon the other ones. Purnaha. The next word is Ekaha. One. Logical progression. How many witnesses are there? So, no Swami, there are 70 witnesses here, all of us separately. That's what it looks like. Now you are all great Advaitis, so you are laughing at that. What 70 witnesses? But that's what we normally feel. I will not dwell further on it. It's one witness. And that one witness in all beings, that one witness is the Vedantic, Advaitic idea of God. Yes, I was just going to quote it and you quoted it. So we are all on the same page. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna in the 13th chapter tells Arjuna, the knower of this body within you, call him the knower of the field. The body is the field, inside it the one who observes the field. I'm feeling I'm here. Awareness. That awareness is knower of the field, Kshetrajna. And the body is the field. Field and field knower. Immediately question will come, okay, so there are so many fields here. So there must be so many knowers of the field. 70, 80 people and 80 knowers of the field. Or is there one? First question. How many knowers are there here? Our natural reaction is to say so many people. But you know why we say so many people? Because we see so many bodies.
Yes.
And we also infer, and it's true, there are so many minds. Many minds, many bodies, so we say many witnesses. Krishna says, is it many witnesses or one? And second, what about God? In Vedanta society, it's a religious organization, you haven't mentioned God even once. What kind of atheist society is this? Just as a by the way, I'll point out something. Sam Harris, who is a well-known atheist, militant atheist, is completely against all kinds of religion. But if you look at his book, Waking Up, according to him, most of religion is superstition and nonsense. Get rid of it. But in that book, Waking Up, he says there are two traditions which have a core of truth. Even though all of it I don't agree with. He's a neuroscientist. But there is a core of truth in these only two traditions which I have found. One, he says, Advaita Vedanta, this one. And the other one is Dzogchen Buddhism, which Dalai Lama teaches, the Tibetan Buddhism. He says, these two I cannot, even if I try my hardest, I cannot refute them. There is a core of truth, unrefutable truth there, irrefutable truth there. Anyway, that's just an aside. Ekaha, Krishna says in the next verse, one of the most important verses of Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, second verse in some, there's a little confusion here, second verse in some Bhagavad Gita and third verse in some Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita has either 700 verses or 699 verses depending on which version you take. 701 verse, yes. Depending on which version you take. Because in 13th chapter, it either starts with Arjuna's question or without a question. If you start with Arjuna's question, then third shloka of 13th chapter. Without Arjuna's question, then second shloka of 13th chapter. What does Krishna say? In half a verse, he answers two questions. Which are the two questions? Just now I mentioned two questions. One question, how many witnesses in all these bodies? One. Second, what about God? In half a verse he answers both questions. He says, Kshetragyam chapi mam viddhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. O Arjuna, know me alone to be the one witness in all body-mind complexes. The one pure consciousness in all of us, shining forth through it, all our senses, our minds. And in error thinking, I am a samsari. I think I am Arjuna, and that one is Duryodhana, and that one is Bhishma. Krishna says, no. In reality, you are also Krishna, he is also Krishna, he is also Krishna. You are also pure consciousness, I am the same pure consciousness, he is the same pure consciousness, she is the same pure consciousness. One consciousness in all bodies. Two questions. How many consciousnesses? One. What about God? This is God. Krishna says, I am the consciousness in all bodies. Deny the existence of God now. If you deny the existence of God, you are denying your own existence. There are people who deny the existence of heaven and hell. There are people who deny, Sam Harris denies the existence of God. Deny the existence of religion, superstition. Deny the existence of enlightenment, anything. Deny all of that. But none of them will deny their own existence. Show me one person who denies his or her own existence. Not one. Even Descartes couldn't do it. In his great project, he ended up with cogito ergo sum. I exist because I can experience my own thoughts. I do not exist this thought. I am experiencing it. So I must exist. Nobody denies his or her own existence. And Krishna in the Gita and Ashtavakra here says, that undeniable existence within you is God. That's the Vedantic idea, the irrefutable conception of God. The only one is what you find in Advaita Vedanta. Everything else can be doubted.
That means soul is only one, not many.
According to Advaita Vedanta.
That
Again,
Paramatma.
precision. The word soul. Problematic. If you translate into Vedanta, if you say Sukshma Sharira, one or many. How many minds are here? Many. Because the word soul in English is used ambiguously. He's a good soul. What does it mean? He's a good mind,
Good person.
good heart, good person. In that case, how many souls? Many, many. But soul as a spiritual reality, consciousness within everybody. If you say that is what you mean by soul, then one.
That's Atman. Atma.
What is the first word we started off today with? Atma Sakshi Vibhu Purna. So Atman, all of this we are talking about 1.5 hours is Atma. What is Atma? Forget that. What did I tell you? Remember that much. What is Atma? Forget that. What is Atma?
Me.
You. Hold on to that. Otherwise what will happen is, my Atma is alright. He told me about my Atma. My Atma got a medical checkup fully fit. But I have many problems.
Is there any difference between soul and the spirit?
Spirit is what you find in bars, I think.
I don't get
And soul is what is under your shoe. So they're different. That's what I am saying. Stick to experience. Don't get lost in words. Ashtavakra is not interested in words. Purna, Vibhu, all of these, they refer to something that you are experiencing right now. Not theory.
Soul and Atma are not equal.
No.
Ashtavakra's approach is, who cares? Ashtavakra says, I am not interested in soul, I am not even interested in Atma, I am interested in you. We will do anything to avoid talking about ourselves. Why? Because that enables me to remain a samsari. Ashtavakra will corner you and set you free. But actually we don't want to be free. I want to get moksha, God realization, enlightenment, but not just yet. Later on. In time. After retirement, at the point of death. And when I die, but not now.
Busy.
So now, I'm busy. I have many things to do. We want to protect our individual existence. I remember, time for lightness break, joke break. Swami Bhuteshanandaji, my guru, he was the 12th president of the order, and somebody used to ask questions. And it was wonderful. Every day in the morning we go to do pranams, and we being the senior Swamis would ask. I was a very junior brahmachari, so we wouldn't even get a chance to stay in the same room. We'd have to stand outside. And there would be microphones, speakers put outside so that we could hear what he was saying. One day the question answer was very interesting. Somebody asked, why are people afraid of enlightenment? Narendranath went around asking people, Vivekananda, have you seen God? Have you seen God? And he found Sri Ramakrishna, who said, yes, I will show him to you. And it touched him and everything started spinning and into a great light. And what was Narendranath's reaction? What are you doing to me? I've got parents at home. I've got a father and mother. And he chuckled and said, all right, let it be. It'll happen in its due course. He got scared. Arjuna in the Gita, he heard 10 chapters of the Gita and he said, if you think, can I actually experience this? Krishna said, yes, you can experience it. And he showed him. What happened to Arjuna? Terrified. He said, no, I don't want this. It's terrifying. Swami Brahmananda said, everybody gets a vision and all that. Why, when will I get a vision? Rakhal Maharaj. Sri Ramakrishna was indifferent. He said, when the Divine Mother's will be there, you will see. That day or the next day, he was in the Kali temple, meditating in the evening. Suddenly the image became living, a conscious image. Mrinmayi became Chinmayi. Shining forth. What happened to Rakhal? He ran away. And Sri Ramakrishna chuckled and said, you bothered me so much, now you are running away. Now the question was to Bhuteshanji, why are people afraid?
Why?
You say again and again that you want it. When you get it, why are you afraid? Why? So his answer was, of course, that, imagine that everything that you hold dear, my relationships, my world view, my idea about myself, body, mind, everything disappears into this great void. The Atman can seem to be a void. Nothingness. And you feel torn apart. The terror is inevitable. This is the terror of who? Whose terror? Samsari's terror. Not Sakshi. Sakshi is not afraid. The samsari is actually being torn apart. That's why you feel terrified. If you think you are the samsari, you will feel terrified. Anyhow, he explained that. Then the really funny thing came next. He would say the most humorous things without laughing. He would just have the same expression. Remember, he was 98 years old at that time. So he said, that's why people are terrified. And then he said, I'll tell you in Bengali, it works best in Bengali, and translate. So in the same tone of voice, he had a low drawl in which he would speak, very slowly. He was very slow in everything. He said, Tabe tomader bhai ne.
Why?
You lot need not be afraid. It took us 1 minute to realize what he was saying. He was saying that you will not realize God. who has to be afraid? Those who are going to get enlightened and moksha and God realization, and Narendranath and Krishna and Arjuna and others, they can be afraid. Oh, I am going to get this terrifying experience. You need not worry. It took us 1 minute to realize, and everybody burst out in protest. Maharaj, what a Guru, president of the order, he is saying this. Maharaj, what are you saying? That we will not get enlightenment? He was unrelenting. Tomader bhai nahi. You can go around. You lot need not be afraid.
Because all of you are going to realize God.
Because you are not going to realize God. That's what he meant. Tomader bhai nahi. That means actually what he meant was you should try harder. Be serious about it. Ekaha, Krishna says one consciousness in all beings, not many. And then Muktaha, you are free. So no, when I go to Vaikuntha, I will be free. When I go to Ramakrishna Loka, I will be free. No, you are free right now. As this Sakshi pure consciousness, you always were free, you are free, and you will be free. Nothing can bind you. One sadhu in Uttarakhand, Maharaj, we are in bondage. We are trying to get freedom. He put in Hindi, I will repeat to you in English. ये हम लोगों का जो बंधन है, अपना ही मौज है. It's your own fun that you are in bondage. ये हम लोगों का जो मुक्ति है, our liberation, अपना ही मौज है. This is your own fun. You are having fun. As long as you want to be in bondage, you will feel that you are in bondage. The moment you really want to be liberated, nothing can stop you. You are Brahman. What can stop you? Nothing can stop you. Then why is all this going on? He said, Apna mauj hai. It's your fun. You want to play. You are playing. Nothing can harm you. Nothing has been able to harm you till now. Nothing can harm you further. Ekaha, muktaha, chid, pure consciousness we saw earlier. Akriyaha, beyond all action. Beyond karma. Swami Vivekananda said, good, bad. None escape the law. Law of karma. Do something good, you will get good results. Do something bad, you will get bad results. None escape the law. But he said, far beyond name and form is Atman, ever free. Beyond the law of karma. Akriya. A lot can be said. Full lecture can be given on this Akriya, but I am not going to give another lecture. Then quickly let me touch on the last line. Remember, we have done only 1/4. A verse has 4 parts. I've done only 1/4. But let me just quickly touch. Asanga, Nispriya, Shanta. What is your nature? This pure consciousness which you are right now is always Asanga, not attached to anything. Nothing in the world sticks to you. The dearest thing which you want to hold to yourself will go away. The dearest thing to a mother is her baby. There was a time when the baby was not there. There is a time when the baby is there. After some time the baby will grow up and go away. You cannot hold on to it. Why after some time? That very day, that very night, when the mother has spent so much time taking care of the baby, whole heart is in the baby. When she goes to sleep, where is the baby? Gone. Not gone, but not in your awareness. You, the Atma, the pure consciousness, nothing sticks to you. The good does not stick to you, the bad does not stick to you. Your fondest dreams do not stick to you. Your choicest ambitions do not stick to you. Your most terrible fears and anxieties do not stick to you. Happiness, misery, Nothing sticks to you. Imagine from the morning till now, how many times have you been happy? How many times have you been irritated? How many times you have been at peace? How many times have you been disturbed? Today, from the morning till now, has come and gone. You are like the beam of sunlight in which, like dust motes, they float in the beam of sunlight. All these things come and go. Asanga, nothing sticks to you. Nothing sticks to light. Nothing sticks to light. Light only illumines. Nispriya, that pure consciousness has no desire. Desire is in the mind. You as pure consciousness, you don't have any desire. Brahmat samsara, by error you think you are samsari. Oh, I have so many. Swami, you are a monk, you don't have desires. But I as a samsari, I have so many desires. Nothing. The moment you fall asleep tonight, where are the desires? Gone. One blow to the head, amnesia, where are the desires? Desires are so delicate. Don't think you are bound by desires. Never. Desires depend on you. You don't depend on desires. Yes. She's enjoying it. Nispriya and Shanta. Ever peaceful. No, Swami, I am very disturbed. You are the witness of your disturbance. That witness is ever peaceful. I am not denying this disturbance. There can be disturbance in the family. There can be disturbance in your social life. There can be disturbance in the body, sickness in the body. There can be disturbance and depression in the mind. You are the equal witness of all of them. You are the witness of their absence. You are the witness of their arrival. You are the witness of their presence. You are the witness of their departure. Nothing has ever stuck to you. You, the witness, Shanta. You try to disturb yourself, also the witness will never be disturbed. You will see you will be the witness of the disturbance. You are not disturbed. Then what is all this problem? Brahmat samsara vaniva. It is by our sheer ignorance, I think I am a samsari. Even when you think you are a samsari, you are not a samsari. You are none other than God. One last word and finish. Asanga, Nispriya, Shanta. One thing is to be pointed out. The three great problems in our life. Kama, Krodha, Lobha. Desire, anger and greed. Asanga. It is because of attachment that desire comes. It is because of clinging that desire comes. You be attached to anything. Could be your husband or wife or child or even the pet dog. Desire will come that it is mine. But there is attachment is not your nature. Your real nature is detachment. Even with trying to be also, you cannot be attached to anything. You by nature you are completely detached. Asanga. Notice your asanga nature, you will be free of desire. Spriya. Spriya is thirst. That is the seed of lobha, greed. You are nispriya, that pure consciousness has no thirst for anything. Everything, it's the witness of all thirst. Notice that you will be free of greed. Nispriya, free of greed. And then Shanta, ever peaceful. Restlessness is the seed of anger, krodha. You are completely peaceful nature, pure consciousness. You will be free of anger. I have given you secret. How to be free of desire, how to be free of greed, how to be free of anger. All three. Notice the asanga nature, nispriya nature, shanta nature of pure consciousness. Brahmat samsara vaniva. Only by ignorance we think we are samsaris. I pray to Sri Sri Thakur, Ma and Swamiji, that what we have studied here may be a light unto our lives from this day onwards. It will go on working. If you think about it, dwell on this verse, it will work faster. If you do not work on it also, it will continue to work. Whether you do not think about it again also, that what has been transmitted today will go on working in your minds. Vivekananda said, truth is a corrosive substance of infinite power. I have spoken, Ashtavakra has spoken the truth not to your conscious mind, not even to the subconscious mind. It is spoken truth to the God within you. And the God will wake up. The giant wakes up. I pray to the Lord that this magnificent waking up may happen in this very life of ours as soon as possible. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. 1.5 hours.
When it was written, this Ashtavakra?
We don't know. Nobody knows. Who is the author? Nobody knows. You can say Ashtavakra, but it's not actually Ashtavakra. It's a conversation between Ashtavakra and Janak Raja. Read it, but read it with care. It's a bomb.
Yeah.
This is a big book, very
It's a tiny book.
small,
Even the
tiny,
second
Small book.
sloka also.
Ha.
Muktimicchasi
Chetata
chetata
Vishayan Vishavatyata. So it is
Satyam piyushavat bhaja.
it's a very powerful book. It's a very powerful book, but danger of being misunderstood. Remember, when I was in Gangotri, that's the only book I'd taken to the Himalayas to read. I will read this and meditate. One senior, very old monk who lived in a hut near me. Mahatma ji, kya pad rahe hain? What are you reading, young monk? I said, this one. He smiled and he said, theek hai, it's not bad. But isko bhi padhiye. He gave me another book. Vishnu Sahasranam. Then he said something very vital. Nahi to akelapan chubega. Otherwise, you'll be pricked by loneliness.
I don't understand.
You will understand.
Translate it.
Keep both together. Jnana and bhakti. Safe.
Okay, got it.
Only Ashtavakra. I've seen such people. Because it's so powerful. You take it up, here is the truth. What is necessary for anything else? Temples, idols, forget it. Bhajan, Kirtan, Bhakti, forget it. Doing work for others, good causes, good work, forget it. Meditation also, forget it. Because Ashtavakra says awful things about meditation also. Says, your only bondage is that you meditate. He says. So things like that.
Too much reading is also dangerous. In Gita also it is said, Yadate moha kalilam buddhir vetitavishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotaveshya shrutasya cha. Even Ashtavakra also in some shloka it is said that many people have said, even Vedanta also. Previously I used to like Vedanta. Now Vedanta was also misunderstood. Because why Madhvacharya is saying something, why Shankaracharya is saying something. So all these, even in one shloka I don't remember, Ashtavakra has said, who is not going to be happy by rejecting all these things?
There. Alright.
In Ashtavakra, when I read, I find this is the
This
great
is the last
book.
question, yes.
This is the book where it tells your body is mithya, your heaven is mithya, your hell is mithya. Would you elaborate a little bit? Most of us, we think heaven is there, what is hell? How does
Started laughing
Ashtavakra
as if they all know
convince
and I am a
us?
stupid.
Yes.
Realistic.
That will take about 30 minutes to explain. But basically, you notice that Ashtavakra stresses pure consciousness alone is the reality when you say Purnam. It's like saying water is the reality, wave is mithya. Mithya means not that it does not exist, it has a dependent existence. It does not exist apart from the water.
Right.
Similarly, your heaven and hell and world and meditation, all of that, they are nothing other than this pure consciousness which you are. If you recognize that, then nothing is necessary. All of those things are necessary for you to recognize that. All religion, bhakti, meditation, doing good works, rituals, scriptures, Vedanta also, all of that is necessary to come to this realization. If you have this realization, nothing else is necessary.
In that case, there is no life after death, perhaps.
Why life after death? There is no life before death also. Brahmana is the reality. Because our general idea of moksha is, I was born many times, I am born in this life, by the grace of God I will attain liberation. The Hindu idea, Buddhist idea, Jain idea is that then I will not come back to this limited life again. That is moksha. But what Ashtavakra says, that's a kindergarten idea of moksha. You were always free, always Brahman. Now, I was Brahman, but now I am a Jiva, samsari. No, you are still Brahman, always free, muktaha. And later on, you will always remain free. So there was no birth for you. It's not that many births were there. Now after liberation, births will stop. No, no. You never had a birth. Even now you are not born. Is Brahman born now? The body was born. In the pure consciousness. So there was no birth for you earlier, no death for you earlier, no birth now also, no death now also, even in future also no birth and no death. One free Brahman always exists. This is the advanced idea of moksha. When Ashtavakra says moksha, he means this. The conventional idea that I was in bondage, now I will be liberated, children's idea is this. You can begin there, but you must mature. Fine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very nice. Enlightened here also.